Imagine a mansion that looks plucked from the French countryside. Gray stone walls, massive towers, and sprawling gardens, all sitting atop a hill in rural Pennsylvania. This fairy tale estate, known as Gray Towers, was more than just a summer home, it was the cradle of the conservation movement. Hi everyone, Ken here. Hit that subscribe button and let's explore this house. In 1865, Gifford Pinchot was born into a life of comfort and opportunity. His father, James, had amassed a fortune as a successful New York City wallpaper merchant, and his mother, Mary, was the daughter of one of Manhattan's wealthiest real estate developers. The Pinchot family's prosperity ensured Gifford wanted for nothing in his youth. Yet far from raising a pampered socialite, this privileged upbringing set the stage for an unexpected calling. James became increasingly alarmed at how America's woodlands were being ravaged for short-term profit. He urged his eldest son Gifford to consider forestry, then an unheard-of career in the United States. Gifford, who had always loved nature, heeded this advice. He enrolled at Yale University in the 1880s and sought out the closest thing to a forestry education available. After graduating from Yale in 1889, he traveled to Europe to formally study forestry in France. Immersing himself in European forest management practices, Gifford learned how to grow, harvest, and conserve trees in a sustainable way. Radical ideas to bring back to the US when the country was used to seemingly limitless virgin forest. His first big opportunity came from another wealthy family. George Vanderbilt hired him in 1892 to manage the forest of the Biltmore estate in North Carolina. There, Gifford established the nation's first example of scientifically managed forestry, proving that woodlands could be logged responsibly while still turning a profit. This success launched his reputation as a pioneering forester. In Washington, he soon rose through the ranks of the Federal Forestry Bureau, and by 1898 he was head of the U.S. Division of Forestry, and in 1905 his close friend President Theodore Roosevelt appointed him the first chief of the newly created United States Forest Service. Under Gifford's dynamic leadership, the scope of America's forest reserves exploded. National forests expanded from 32 reserves to 149, totaling 193 million acres by 1910. He popularized the concept of conservation, managing natural resources wisely to serve the greatest good of the greatest number in the long run, as he often said. This pragmatic philosophy set him apart from preservationists like John Muir, who wanted untouched wilderness. Gifford instead envisioned working forests that could provide timber, water, and grazing indefinitely if managed scientifically. His passion was contagious. President Roosevelt, with Gifford as his chief advisor on forest policy, considered conservation the crowning achievement of his administration. In 1922, running as an anti-establishment candidate, Gifford won the governorship of Pennsylvania, a state then dominated by big business. As governor, he tackled corporate monopolies, slashed a massive state budget deficit, improved care for the mentally ill, and even paved thousands of miles of rural roads. All the while, he lived in Gray Towers, the mansion that witnessed Gifford's extraordinary journey from a privileged youth to a trailblazing leader. Gray Towers doesn't resemble the typical American country home. It looks more like a mini Loire Valley castle transported to the Poconos. Completed in 1886 as the Pinchot family's summer estate, the mansion was designed in the chateauesque style. Famed architect Richard Morris Hunt planned the home using local fieldstone and an eye for European elegance. The result was a picturesque neo-Norman manor that instantly earned the name Gray Towers for its three conical towers clad in gray-blue stone. At approximately 19,000 square feet with 44 rooms and 23 fireplaces, the mansion was as grand as any Gilded Age residence. Visitors arriving in the late 19th century would have been greeted by a sprawling stone facade crowned with slate roofs and chimneys, evoking an aristocratic old-world charm in the Pennsylvania countryside. When Gifford married Cornelia Bryce in 1914 and the couple moved into Gray Towers full-time, Cornelia put her own imaginative stamp on the estate. She collaborated with designers and architects to adapt the grounds for both practical use and whimsical enjoyment. One of Cornelia's earliest projects was to enhance the formal gardens. The property already boasted a large walled garden that James had built to grow prized roses and vegetables. Cornelia added a dramatic black locust tree alley, a double row of locust trees lining a new entrance drive to create a grand approach fitting a governor's mansion. Cornelia also had a half-circle moat built along one side of the mansion's terraces as a decorative water feature reflecting the stone walls. Even the courtyard between the mansion and gardens received special treatment. It was paved in patterned marble and inset with a granite design. Scattered throughout the landscape are several charming outbuildings, each with its own story. One small stone cottage, whimsically called the Letterbox, was Gifford's personal office and sanctuary on the grounds. Here he could retreat from the bustle of the main house to concentrate on correspondence and writing. And family lore holds that he even used it as a campaign headquarters during his gubernatorial runs. Another cottage, playfully named the Bait Box, was built as a playhouse for the couple's only child. The Bait Box sits at the end of a long reflecting pool garden. Its name nods to the family's love of fishing, and it was outfitted with a small forge at one end so young Gifford Jr. could tinker at blacksmithing. These imaginative touches, a letterbox office, a bait box playhouse, a fingerbowl dining room, give Grey Towers an endearing personality, blending sophistication with rustic charm. Rounding out the grounds is an open-air amphitheater carved into the hillside below the mansion. The Pinchots use the grassy theater for summer events like musical performances and community gatherings, ice cream socials, picnics, and the like. Many decades later, the amphitheater would host one particularly notable crowd. On September 24, 1963, President John F. Kennedy addressed a throng of some 10,000 people there. But we're getting a bit ahead of the story. Let's head inside to look around while we go on to Gifford's next chapter. By the late 1930s, he had achieved more in one lifetime than most could in 3. He had already served 2 terms as governor and made a lasting mark on conservation policy. In 1938, at age 73, he considered one more run for governor to help pull Pennsylvania out of the Great Depression, but younger candidates ultimately took up that mantle. His elective political life effectively ended, yet he hardly retired into quiet oblivion. Even in his 70s, he remained a tireless advocate for sustainable resource management and rural economic relief. He wrote books sharing his expertise, including Breaking New Ground, published in 1947, an autobiography chronicling his conservation years. Until the very end, he continued speaking out on forestry and pushing for policies to help ordinary farmers and laborers. Gifford Pinchot passed away in 1946 at the age of 81. The cause was leukemia. Fittingly, this man, who had dedicated his life to protecting American land, was laid to rest in the soil of Milford Cemetery, not far from Grey Towers. At his funeral, conservationists, politicians, and local citizens alike mourned the loss of a national figure. Tributes poured in, highlighting Gifford's legacy as the father of the U.S. Forest Service and a champion of the public good. Just 1 year after his passing, a vast swath of national forest land in Washington state was renamed Gifford Pinchot National Forest in his honor, a living memorial of 1.3 million acres of protected woodlands carrying forward his name and vision. Closer to home, Pennsylvania later named a state park in his honor as well. As for Grey Towers, it remained in the family for a brief period under the care of his widow Cornelia. The grand house on the hill, with all its quirky features and memories, could easily have become a private relic or been sold off, but the Pinchots had a different vision. They recognized that Grey Towers itself could live on as a beacon for conservation education and public service, a physical extension of Gifford's legacy. In 1963, Gifford Jr. made a profound decision. He donated Grey Towers and its 102-acre estate to the U.S. Forest Service. This gift ensured that the property would be preserved and used for the public good rather than remaining a private residence. The Forest Service embraced Grey Towers as a center for forestry research and conservation leadership training. In that same year, it was among the first properties declared a National Historic Landmark for its significance in U.S. history. A few years later, it was listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Finally, in 1980, Grey Towers was officially designated a National Historic Site, a status that today makes it unique. It is the only National Historic Site managed by the U.S. Forest Service. Today, Grey Tower stands not only as a museum of the Pinchot family's life, but as a living center for environmental dialogue. The first floor of the mansion is open for guided tours, allowing the public to walk through Gifford's library, the grand hall, and even his bedroom, furnished much as they were in his time. The estate's blend of cultivated gardens and wild woodland patches reflects the balance Gifford saw between use and preservation. And with that, I'll turn it over to you. What did you think about Grey Towers, or perhaps something else stuck out to you? Either way, let me know down below in the comments section. And while you're there, make sure you're subscribed so you never miss an exciting episode of This House.